Now, let's put it underneath there. All right, well, what I'm up to today here is getting the framework, the transom framework assembled, finishing it up at the center line right here. You know, I've got to put a piece to span the two pieces of the bottom of the framework together and fasten them together. I'm going to fasten them together with some like nice big number 24 bronze wood screws. But, you know, I'm also going to leave a space in between the very two bottom pieces of framework, because basically what I'm trying to get to have happen here is eventually when I fit the transom to the horn timber, I want the horn timber to come back and extend as far back as the transom planking, as well as far back as the thickness of the transom planking. So basically I'm going to leave a space between these very two bottom pieces, the vertical cuts of which will be slightly off angle, just the tiniest bit, the vertical cuts on the transom framework itself, because I want to be able to have it tighten up as I lower it down onto the horn timber. But this piece that spans the center line here is kind of like a little floor timber actually, and it's going to get fit to the very top of these pieces and fastened down with wood screws, like I said. So right now you can see that I've got the two very bottom pieces of the transom framework button into each other at the center line, but I'm going to take out like this. I'm going to take out 3 inches on each side of it, and the idea of that is so that the horn timber fits in between there. So I'm going to have that other piece span the gap when I fasten it together. So like I said, each one of those vertical cuts has got a little tiny bit of an angle to it, maybe a degree or two. And now I'm going to drill the holes, and like I said, these are number 24 bronze wood screws. They don't drive in real easy. I probably can't get them to drive all the way in laying down like this, because the piece just keeps moving around on me. So I got to make sure that my countersink for the head of the screw is deep enough, and sometimes I adjust that a little bit, and then I'll get the screws in there quite a ways, but at some point I'm going to have to tip the thing up on edge and then climb inside of it there so I can get my weight against it and finish driving these screws. You know, without doing it this way, I'd have a hard time getting them to come in. I keep ruining the end of the screw or the head of the screw where the bit fits in, and we can't be doing that. So basically I've got it stood up here, and I'm going to use, like I say, my weight and give it everything I got and get those heads down in there nice and flat. All right.
This looks good.
Well, here we are assembling the transom framework, and we've got the whole perimeter of it assembled already. We've got a cross ball on the top of it. That's a temporary situation until we start planking it. When we go to plank it, we'll actually flip it over. We're going to plank on this side of it back over here. So, you know, it'll be upside down from here. And as we plank up, we'll get up to about here. We won't need the cross ball anymore. Once we get rid of that, then we'll be able to have all of these frames nice and stable, because we'll have planking on it. Then I'll be able to cut the tops of the frames and put a top piece on, which we've already gotten out. But basically what we're doing now is trying to connect these vertical frames that are going to be like this to this bottom piece right here. So I've cut one of the joints right here. It's not something that I've invented, this joint, but it's a little bit different than a lot of people might see. You know, I mean, basically you gotta have some way to fasten this to that. You know, you could cut a big giant slot in here if you wanted to and bury this thing in a slot. You could do a tapered one, you could do all kinds of things, but you know, mostly slots or very big ones just weaken this bottom piece. I don't want to do that. So I've come up with this joint right here, and I'm going to show it to you. See, it's an overlap joint, so it's going to be fastened down with screws right through here, you know, so this piece will be fastened to this piece with screws. But if I wanted to have it so that this 2 inches right here wouldn't be just wagging around and not being stable. So basically I've cut a little bit of a slot in the top of this bottom piece right here and cut that same angle on the frame, across the frame, and then I cut vertically and lapped it over on there. And basically the idea of it is that it would be mechanically fastened to this bottom piece, overlapped onto it, mechanically fastened, and then it's got this little angle right here that I cut into the bottom piece. And you can see there's an angle on this frame right here. Now the idea of that is that if the boat were to suffer any impact, like in the transom, like say right in here, it wants to drive these frames off like that. In order to drive that frame off of there, that joint's going to do nothing but get tighter as you try to drive it off. So it's actually connected in that sense. It's also fastened. So it's got quite a connection actually to the bottom piece right here. This is the side that's got to be even right here for the planking to go on. So once we get all 4 of these, or all 6 of these frames put in and connected to the bottom piece and fastened and shortened up, then we'll be able to start planking. I'll show you how I go about cutting these. I just got a little 10-point handsaw here, and I'm going to line it up with my mark. Just saw in there with a little handsaw. Now I'm going to take a bevel set. This is the bevel that I'm trying to get to. So I'm just going to run the saw alongside the bevel set here and keep them at the same angle. Yeah. Like that. Now, I cut this slot a little bit deeper than this slot because the transom framework is actually sloping uphill like this. So in order to be 90 degrees to the frame itself, I had to cut this slot a little bit deeper than this one. Now I'm just going to take a chisel and knock that block out of there. I don't really have a very nice mallet. I wish I did have a really nice mallet for driving chisels, but I don't. This is my friend Captain Bill's crab hammer, what we used to take out for years and years and smash crabs, green crabs and fiddler crabs, and for blackfishing. So, you know, this little mallet's got memories for me. All right, so I've drawn out the piece that I want to cut out here, and this is a vertical cut, and this is the cut on an angle that matches the cut that I used over there. I used the same bevel set to match up with my handsaw as I did to draw this line, as I did to check the slot that I put in the bottom framework. So all those angles match. I should be able to cut this with the bandsaw and have it fit awful close without touching it up, but I'll probably have to touch it up a little bit.
Yeah, that was solid.
I wanted to explain to you guys why I put this knee hanging past the transom framework a little bit. And the reason for it is that the planking goes on here kind of on an angle like that. So by the time I get fed down to what I call the control line, which is the forward edge of the transom framework, right in here where my thumbnail is, I'll put a pencil mark on it. Right in here is the control line. So after that line, it's going to get a little bit of a bevel. Now, I didn't figure those bevels off of my loft because I hadn't even drawn the second section, nor did I even know how wide the transom was really going to be. And so I hung this out past it so that when I bevel that off, I'm going to bevel quite a bit off of here, and then hopefully I'll get down to very close to here. But I didn't want to make it so that once I beveled the transom, that this piece would be short and not bare against the planking, because it just wouldn't look good. It probably wouldn't hurt anything, but you know, I try to be organized and try to make it look good at the same time. So basically what's going to happen is it's going to get fed off on an angle like that. You know, so basically that's going to, in order to find those angles, I can either work at the loft and do what they call bevel boarding, which at some point I'll teach you how to do that. But basically the thing to do to find all these angles is to make the next section and then space it off of this section the right amount, and then just use a little piece of wood to go down like this to and use that, you know, as a guide for dubbing this transom off. So basically what's going to happen is I'm going to plank it first and do the dubbing of the planking and the transom framework and this knee all at the same time. There's bevel boarding right there. Say that right there was your transom framework, right? This was the next mold forward, and the next one from that, where you can just strike a line at basically 90 degrees to this curve, or to the center of this curve across. It's like a diagonal. And then you measure this distance and you put it on a bevel board. This is the frame spacing right here. You put that dimension right there, and then you take this dimension that goes between here and here, and you put that over here, and then you draw this curve in between, and there is the bevel on the transom or the framework that you're working on. So that's called bevel boarding, and it's possible that I may use that system to bevel all the molds. I'm going to number these things. This is 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And how can you beat it? You can't. Wow. Oh, that corner's got to go way more. So now I'm going to put a couple screws right down through here. Let's just see how that works out with a little wax. We've had that lump of wax for probably, I got a bunch of them, but I remember getting them from some beekeeper actually. That was a long time ago, probably 40 years ago. And I've had it ever since. I'm actually going to bed them on there with a little tiny bit of polysulfide, but it's not really necessary, but I think it's a good thing to bed everything on anything. You know, I think nobody's, and a lot of lobster boats and many, many boats, nothing was bedded. But it's just another opportunity for things to get rotten. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like that. Yeah, pull that right out. Yeah, now slide this up until it's on the block like that. Yeah, now stand it right up. All right. Now, let's get rid of this stuff here. Well, you know what? We're probably going to put it up on a block.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can readjust the blocking afterwards. Ready?
Yep.
That's the way you do it.
All right.
Well, there we have the transom framework basically complete, except for lopping off the length of the vertical frame and putting a cap on the top of it. But we're not going to do that until we plank it actually up to about here. That'll stabilize all the frames so they won't wag around, and we can undo the crossball because it's going to get planked up all the way up to here actually. So, you know, this is, I'm just giving a little quick test, or just to see what it kind of looks like. Yeah. And like I said, these were all pre-fit already. So when I put them on there and put a clamp on it vertically, it will tighten those right up perfectly tight. So that's our next move, is to go ahead and apply the planking on the transom. And like I said, it's already been pre-fit, so it's not going to be a lot of work fitting it or anything. Should be an easy thing to accomplish. Look at that, nice and tight. Just like that. There you go. So that's our next project, is to start applying the cedar planking onto the framework of the transom of Orca.